Hi, my name is Jed. I am today going to show you how to make a very simple lasagna. Lasagna is a food that we love to make. We actually sometimes call it bake. We're going to cook it here in this stove roaster. And what's great about it is that we make a lot of food, and this is easy to warm up. So this is several meals. Well, maybe for the four of us now, this is maybe 2 meals. But it's great. It's a decent amount of prep work that turns into a short amount of time later on. So what we're going to do is make just a straightforward lasagna layered with pasta. We're going to make a nice simple oat and buckwheat pasta, and we're going to use some ground flaxseed to make some flax meal there. And we are going to also layer along the base of this with some lentils. So the nice thing is with lentils, when you're cooking a lot of vegetables in a bake, they get really soggy. So we put the lentils on the bottom, and I'll show you that as we start layering it all up, and that will absorb and cook the lentils as you go, and you have like a lentil base, which is really great. So we've got spinach. I've cut up a bunch of mushrooms and onions with garlic. We're gonna roast those all up. I've got a couple of sheet pans of diced sliced yam that we're going to cook for layering. I'm going to cut up some carrot. We're going to cook some tomato sauce to top it all, make a really nice garlicky tomato sauce, and we're going to use some spices or some herbs. And we have a cashew cream that we're going to use as our fat for some flavor in replacement of regular cheese, like using a ricotta or a mozzarella that you would use in a lasagna. But the thing that I really enjoy about this one is that we get there's lots of good carbohydrates and especially the root veggies here. But what kind of sticks to your ribs, as my mom would say, is the combination of the flours. And doing a nice thin, simple rolled out flour is what we're gonna do today instead of using a pasta machine, and just cutting into shapes. So we'll go through that in a sec. So here we go. Okay, so we've got some spinach on here cooking down. We got quite a lot of spinach, which is really great. That's just gonna continue to cook down. That is pasta that we're eating today, so that has nothing to do with what we're cooking. This is some shallots and garlic that I'm cooking down. And we are going to throw the tomato sauce. I put it in a really big pot like this because it will then kind of simmer and splatter, and I like just to keep it cleaner. That's why it's in such a huge pot. But that will be enough tomato sauce. But what we're going to do for some flavoring is we've got some fennel seed. I really enjoy tomato sauce and fennel. I find that the flavor is great. So you can use ground fennel seed too. I really enjoy opening the seed. It's so incredibly fragrant when you crush it, and either use a hand grinder, but I find you can do quite a lot in the mortar and pestle, and it comes into a powder really easily, and it's so sweet and fragrant. It's a flavor that I really love. So all of that into the tomato sauce, and then we'll let that cook away. And then next we're gonna move on to making some pasta sheets. Okay, so we have our veggies continuing to roast. And what we're doing with the veggies, the reason we're roasting them, it develops a bit of flavor, but we're also dehydrating them. So as I was saying earlier, when we make the bake or the lasagna, there's a lot of vegetables. So there's a lot of moisture once it starts cooking down, and we've got the tomato sauce, we're adding a lot of liquid there to create that. So we want liquid, but we want the right flavored liquid. So getting rid of some of the water by roasting stops it from being so overly wet, is what I found. Especially when you put in the cashew cheese, if it's too wet, that just becomes a bit of a gloop, and the whole thing becomes a bit of a mass. And that's been a bit of a complaint in our family. So I've learned to try to reduce the moisture as best we can and layer. And that's also what the lasagna sheets that we're making here do for us, is that we'll cook. We're gonna put them in uncooked. In lasagna sheets, typically you blanch them and then put them in. Here we're gonna put them in raw, if you will. So we're going to make up our pasta sheets, but the sheets are gonna also help with absorbing a lot of the water. So I'm putting in, as I was saying, a layer of lentil. The layer of lentil is also lentil. Like, you got a lot of wonderful fibrous pulse there that we need to eat more of. So we're gonna add the flax. We're gonna add a little bit of the water. We've got, what do we have there? We had 3 cups of water to start with. And I'm gonna put in about 1 cup of water just to start. So what we're doing here is creating the exact same sort of mixture as you'd want from pasta. So a nice, dense ball that is quite dry. And I mix it around in here to a certain point, and then I'll put it onto the deck and I will start working it there. So as you can see, like to put in a little bit of water at a time and get just the right amount of mixture. And now I'm going to get it onto my work surface. Get that one aside. And there it is. So this, actually I probably already used a little bit too much water. So I put in a cup. So there was 3 cups of flour there. And I put in about a cup of water. And plus about half a cup of water. So 1.5 cups to 3 cups. And I could tell just by putting my hands on it, it was just too sticky. You don't want it sticky. You want it stuck, but you don't want it sticky, if that makes sense. You want it to bind and become pasta dough, but you don't want to have a sticky mess. That's getting to be kind of the consistency that you want right there. We're going to need that now, but you want it to always be fairly easy to manage. This is also a little bit soft. You want to try to get some density. So as I knead this, the moisture in the middle is going to come out, and I'm going to need to add more flour, about 2 or 3 tablespoons at a time, because I don't want it to be sticky. And I want to create some density in it. Again, like if you're making a regular pasta dough that is going to be, high protein flour, if you are using egg in there, you can make pasta dough out of just oil and flour with some water too. It's very, very simple, very, very simple to make pasta dough. Pasta dough is so wonderfully easy to make and so forgiving. Starting to get the craft of making all of the shapes, that's a whole different story. Like that's something that people take sometimes a lifetime to develop, how they create the shapes of pasta, depending on what it is that they make. But here we're making easy sheets. We're just gonna roll this out into sheets, and that's gonna be really simple. So I'm gonna continue to knead this, adding a little bit of flour, and in a few minutes, I'll have a nice dense ball of pasta dough. So here is the dough, like so. So the dough is now quite doughy, like you expect from having pasta dough. That's like a ball of pasta dough. Also giving it some time. So I made it where it wasn't overly hard, but I was able to leave it, and the flax continues to congeal. And so it makes it a little bit rubbery. So we now are going to break that into some pieces. So it looks like on the inside. That's how it's supposed to look on the inside. So cutting pasta dough into pieces is always an easier way to deal with pasta dough. So we're going to roll that into a ball. We're going to flour our work surface, like so. We're going to grab our very large rolling pin and start to roll that out. So we're going to roll this out so it's pretty flat. I want to always make sure that it's nicely floured. We're gonna try to get to like 1/8 of an inch. It's starting to break when I do that, so you have to be pretty careful. And then what I'll do, once I've got it in, starting to get a little bit stuck, is I will take a roller and cut it into some shapes. So basically we've got that size there, and cut it in half. We've got 4 layers there. I'll put some dough back together from the edges, and we'll end up having 5 layers of dough. So nice and simple. So we've made some pasta. So it turned out okay. So pasta sheets. And so now we're gonna start building. So building up a lasagna can be however you want it to be. Like, it really doesn't matter. Like I was saying, I'm gonna put, you don't have to do this with the lentil, but I'm just gonna put a lentil base in here. I put a little bit of olive oil in to begin with, just so it doesn't get too sticky. And it's just a nice thin base. And that will, the moisture will all go to the bottom, and then that will get all absorbed. So we're gonna put that sheet in there, like so. Okay, and there is layer number 1, and we can grab some roasted mushrooms and onions, get them on there. There you go, like so. Okay, then we'll get some, dollop some of the cashew cream in there. Just spread it around. I find this packs up really fast, so you really don't need a lot per level. So just go nice and sparingly as you go. Okay, so first level, next level. Easy to work with this stuff, just like regular fresh pasta sheets. And I've made lots. There's excess, which is great. Okay, we're gonna put in some of the yam. These yams, nice and roasted, so they've sweetened, like they taste fantastic. If anything's brown too much like that, don't put it in. So we have 2 sheets of these, so we'll layer in 1 sheet there, like so. Get it nicely spread around. A little bit more cashew cream. And again, like, you can use a ricotta or a mozzarella, like you could sprinkle cheese on here. Whatever works. It just really doesn't matter. This is just throwing in a bunch of yummy stuff. So I've also salted a lot of this. What you will want to do as you go along here is add some salt and pepper if you want. But a lot of the veg I had already salted. So each layer is salted. Okay, so now it's greens time. We'd cooked down a lot. I probably have 8 cups of spinach altogether, of dry. So that's what it cooks down to. So again, we're throwing a little bit more all around. Let me flavor. And I didn't salt the spinach, so I'm gonna throw some salt in here. So there's about 3/4 of a teaspoon on that one layer, and that's going to soak through as that bakes. Okay, so we're going to get another layer of pasta. Alright, so we got another layer there. Throw in the rest of that. We're starting to get full up here. So what we're going to do here is that we're going to have the mushrooms and onions, and like I'm just improvising here. This really doesn't matter, but I'm going to cook all of this down in this one layer, and then we're going to top it. You can push it down, give it a bit of a pack in there. Okay, now we're going to do one more layer. I'm going to use a carrot on top, and then we're going to put the tomato sauce all over everything. So I am going to throw one more, I'm going to roll out one more layer of pasta. I've got my leftover pasta, so these are all my bits. I'm going to roll this out and make my final layer. We've got one more sheet left from our leftovers. So again, really simple. You just take your leftovers, squish them all together, roll them out with some flour, and you're good. So, and they really don't matter what they look like when they're all cooked with everything all over top of them. They taste yummy. So we'll get that one there. Cut those off. There, that. And we're going to cook our carrot over top. Probably have more carrot than we need. These will all cook up. Okay, we're going to get a little bit more salt over top. And now comes for the tomato sauce. Okay, so tomato sauce, I've gone over the edge here, but I am trying to pack it right in. The tomato sauce is really critical. Like I was saying, we want lots of liquid, but we don't want excess liquid. You want the right amount. So a lot of the plain water in the veggies that you want to extract, you're replacing it with flavored tomato sauce that's going to add a lot more layers of flavor. If you don't extract especially from the spinach, that's got a huge amount of water. There's the spinach water, and that's what was left after they were reduced. So probably that much again boiled off. So, you know, if we put spinach in by itself, lots of water, all the mushrooms and onions, lots of water. So it would become a bit of a soup, and that's what we want to be careful of. That's probably the only main trick. Like learning just how to make the dough work well from not having gluten is just practice. But the trick on making this yummy and serve really well is by not having excess water. So this is going to cook down. We're going to now put tin foil over top of this. We're going to put it into a 375-degree oven for about 45 minutes with the tin foil on. Then we're going to take the tin foil off and leave it for probably another 20 minutes with the tin foil off. So we'll get this right into the oven. So it's been about 45 minutes at 375, and it's good. It hasn't boiled over. I could have put actually a sheet pan along the bottom there, because sometimes, again, when this is really, really moist, it will boil over. So we're going to now cook it for about another 15 minutes or so. It's simmering just a little bit around the edges. I'd like to see a little bit more simmering, but this is going to now start to dehydrate more. So we've kept the moisture in, we've cooked and penetrated through, and now this is going to, we'll probably do another 20 minutes or so. You can't really over bake this, an hour minimum. So we'll do probably an hour 10 altogether. So back in she goes. And something that I didn't tell you that we're gonna do. So great flavor, really yummy, but we really love doing a pesto with this guy. So we've got about 20 minutes. So I'm gonna do a kale walnut pesto. So the pesto, we're gonna start with about 2.5 cups of loose leaves. It's basically one bag that you can get. You can get like you can get them at Whole Foods, and I'm sure there are other places, but it's like a large bag of pesto basil into the jar. And this is going to be kale pesto. So we're going to use our kale zipper. You don't have to use basil, but it is a nice flavor, we find, with having kale and the basil. The kale adds a lot of really great fiber. There's a very wonderfully fibrous green, and it doesn't really change the flavor much. It adds thickness and volume, so you kind of get twice the amount of pesto, but it doesn't change the flavor. The flavor, once everything's in here, it's great. Garlic. We put in probably about 3/4 teaspoon of salt. We're gonna put in, what is this? Let's put in, probably 1/4 cup of walnuts. We're going to squeeze 1 large lemon. I don't know if you can make pesto too lemony. It's hard to say. I love lots and lots of lemon. My family love lots and lots of lemon. So good lemon, salt, garlic, and Vitamix. So I have a Bamix, thank you. So I have a multi-attachment. So Bamix comes with 3 separate attachments, and this is the multi-attachment. And it is the most useful attachment that comes on a Bamix. So there we go. A stick blender is the best tool for this job. Putting this into, as I just said, Vitamix, into a blender, there just isn't enough liquid. There isn't enough volume to do what this is doing. Like this, people ask me often, why would I want to have this if I have a blender? You don't have to, but this job here is absolutely best done with a stick blender. Immersion blender, stick blender. So it's quite thick now. I'm going to put in about 2 tablespoons of olive oil and continue on. Yeah, it's perfect. I don't like using too much olive oil. I find that just making like a paste, because whatever you're going to put it on usually has quite a bit of moisture. So if we make a pesto paste, I think it tastes awesome. So as you can see here, it's kind of making a paste, and I'm just pushing down the sides. Try not to smash too hard in the bottom of the mason jar. Last thing I really want to do is have my mason jar blow out. And with all the kale, you really want to blend it in, or you're going to have it fairly stringy and fibrous. You really want to rip all that kale apart. All right, so there it is. And we have a taster just over here in the wings. He's coming in to try it out. The camera lady is going to also have a try.
That's good.
And I'll get the critique.
Is it for the...
For the lasagna. Yeah. So, how are we?
It's going to taste better on the lasagna, definitely.
Yep. More blending? All right. So, great. So depending on how you like your texture, either, yeah, the kale will definitely add some stringiness, but this rips it all apart. So just do this until you're ready. And there you go. You've got about a half liter of walnut kale pesto that's going to go on the lasagna. The bake or lasagna has been cooking away in here. It is steaming nicely. Starting to kind of crack and dehydrate. So yeah, we're getting the right sort of look here. So if you take a look at that, we've got some nice dehydration cracks in there. So that means everything's starting to get nicely cooked through, and it's not going to be overly liquid. Like when it's cracking, it means like there's not as much liquid in it. So it may be, more liquidy on the bottom. But what we're going to do now is let this sit here for at least 20 minutes. If you were going to serve this directly, this is a dish that is actually much better the next day. The longer this sits around, the more the flavor profile develops, which is amazing. Reheated the next day is, in my opinion, twice as good as the first day. It's amazing as leftovers. So, and it's really dense. So, we would probably, I was saying earlier, this is 2 meals. This is probably 3 meals with a nice salad, nice hearty salad. This is 3 meals for the 4 of us with a nice salad. And we've got the pesto that's going to go on top of that. So this is just going to sit here and cool, and then it will be ready to go in 20 minutes is kind of minimum. Or what I find is that it's too soft. It needs to harden up as it cools. So we'll give it a little bit of time. Okay, so the lasagna, or what I've also referred to as the bake, is done. Done cooling. It's done definitely being cooked. So I'm now going to serve it up. I've got 2 tasters. They're going to share a little bit. I've also put onto the plate just a little simple spinach salad where I made a very simple little vinaigrette where it's thickened up. So I'm just going to throw a little bit of vinaigrette on there. And then we're going to serve up the bake. And it cuts quite nicely. Again, because it's shouldn't be overly wet. Yeah, so there we go. So looking a lot like lasagna. And onto the plate. And now the tasters are going to taste. You can lick that off. There you go.
That's
Yeah?
really good.
Is it? Mm-hmm. So how are the flavors? How's it, like, what's the good part? What are you enjoying about it?
Very warm. Like lasagna.
Very warm? Yeah, but it looks like it's dense, right? So it's not soupy.
Soupy, that's what I like.
Yeah, so like I said, we've when I first started making this, I've made it really soupy, and like serving it in soup, the flavors just aren't really well developed, and it's just not awesome when it's soupy. So that's why I really focus on making sure that it's dense. And here, hold on, before these guys devour the whole thing. That's looking like a lasagna. So you've got your different layers of everything all mixed in there. And so, is it missing anything? Oh, you know what we haven't done, guys? The pesto. So the pesto that we made, we'll just put a dollop of the pesto on top. You can just take a little bit. If you have some leftover of the cashew cream from inside, sometimes a little bit of cashew cream is nice with it too. It can go, I did a really simple little spinach salad, just a handful of spinach and some balsamic dressing. You could easily do like a kale Caesar, lots of different ways of adding more greens to it. Because it is fairly dense. It's nutritionally balanced. Like it's not overly calorically dense. It's pretty nutritionally dense. Processed flour always adds a lot of caloric density. there isn't as much nutrients in the oat flour and the buckwheat flour as there is in all the spinach and more spinach. So, the balance of healthier food over less healthier food is always nutritional over caloric, right? So volume of highly nutritious that has lower calories, leafy greens, root vegetables, over things like processed flour. Like even though it's a buckwheat flour and it's
The hyenas got to it.
the hyenas have definitely got to it. The different flours, the more of that, the more just of caloric density there is in that. There isn't as much in oat flour. There's nutrients in oats, of course, but you take the same amount of calories in kale or spinach comparatively to what you have in the same amount of calories of oat, and you've got a tremendous amount more nutrients in the kale. That's going to be so much better for you and your health and your vitality and your wellness. Even though that flour adds a lot of value to making something like this. So it's not like, hey, let's just eat kale breakfast, lunch, and dinner all day long. You need to have the differences in the variety in your food. But choosing nutrient-dense food higher than calorically dense food as much as we possibly can. So as you can see, the hyenas are finishing up, and I hope this works well for you. Like that was a small bit of this lasagna that has fed the two of them really well. They with a big salad, I would probably give them maybe a little bit more for a whole meal, but really not a whole lot more. You're not going to eat half a slab of this for dinner. It's just a huge amount of calorically dense food. So a nice big salad to round that out. So again, any questions? Let me know, and I hope this works out well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.